Thanks for the introduction. A little bit of me about me. I've been doing SEO and globalization for a very long time. So I work at the intersection between SEO and the localization team. I'm a social linguistics background and a data scientist. I'm also an academic researcher. I'm about to release what I think is going to be a really nice reading regarding to how search engines deal with minority languages, which was very hard work, but super rewarding to understand much more about how we deal with global complexities. I'm also the founder of a platform called Inclusivity, which is an AI tool that checks the inclusive language of content in multiple languages. Enough about me. I'm here to talk about what is implicit search intent and how we can use implicit search intent to understand what people want in different global markets. And I'd like to start this presentation by reminding everyone that before we Google, there were people. SEO was born out of the necessity, or I like to think about it in this way, out of the necessity of understanding what people were looking for, what problems they were tackling, what problems they wanted to solve. And that's why in the past SEO was working pretty well. As I explained earlier, we wanted to rank for things that we were confident that our target user was searching for. But then at a certain point, we forgot about this and we started to think. And when I say we, as an industry as a whole, but even brands itself, even people that don't do SEO and tapped into this industry, that we didn't have to please the users, but Google. We wanted to rank there, be there for many things, even if they were not in our domain, even if we were not experts. So where we saw an opportunity for money because of traffic, we wanted to rank. And that's the result. The result is a long list of content that are all the same, that all use the same modifiers in the test, that think that they have broke the code of language use. Everything looks so flat and looked so flat for so many years and a lot for a very long time. Still, actually, until yesterday, when something completely changed everything. But things have changed in how people search, and things are changing in how people use technology for a lot of different reasons. Users' familiarity with the technology and the way things works. Ads and advertising break the flow when someone search, and it's not uncommon that when you search something and you see an ad, you don't even recognize it's an ad anymore, and you just click. Noise, a lot of noise. When you see this block of text and everything looks the same, it's just noise. Just the human mind cannot comprehend this. They skip things or they click just the results that resonate with them the most because of brand familiarity. Spam, again, it's very easy to spot spam for professionals when we see the SERP, when we look at the SERP. It's not easy for the users, but it became the norm. COVID changed the way people search, the things people search, and then generative AI also changed things or will change things. And this presentation has been prepared before Google released the site abuse reputation algorithm yesterday, and this will shake up things a lot. It already started. So what happens when we combine all these things is that we are at a point where both people and search engines start to evaluate the experience we provide to them from the starting point until the ending point. So basically, when someone searches for a query, it's not about the result, it's about how satisfying is the experience from clicking to the result until purchasing something, completing an action, interacting with a brand, asking for a question. The key point here is people want to trust a brand. And to trust a brand, they need to evaluate the overall experience. On top of this, we need to consider that search is becoming more and more fluid. We were used to just go on Google, search on Google, and the search ended there. Now we have everything available for us. We have Google, we have YouTube, we have Reddit, we have TikTok, and Google and search engines are embedding all these different sources in the SERP, making it even more complicated. A lot of these results are really generic because that's how it works. The higher level we go, the higher level results we get. Some of them are really, really, really in depth, but it's a fluid search. So we cannot expect people to click on our website as it happened in the past, because a video may touch up their attention if they are in a specific country or demographic, a Reddit if they are used to, if they want to have different kind of experience, and so on and so forth. The way users search today influence how search engines deliver results, especially if we think about generative AI and the embedding of AI into search. So the question here today is not only how we bring the conversion and brand awareness, but how do we adapt, especially when we want to go international, when things change completely. When you work on a single language, you tackle the market, and for good or for worse, you know what you are dealing with. When you have to deal with a lot of languages, a lot of countries, things change because the threat change, because the user's habit changes, because the market is completely different. And that's why I always call this the social linguistic approach, aka taking into consideration the language and the cultural relevance when we create and tailored SEO strategies for different markets. The thing is that I am a social linguistics, so this is a very academic definition, but language reflects and shapes the norms, behaviors, and our values as people. And the way we search is the way we see the world, is what usually we search in a way that confirm our expectations of the world because of the language that we use. The language also evolves over time. If you compare the way we spoke in the 70s with the way we speak today, you can clearly see the difference in the idioms that we work, in the honorific that we don't use anymore, in a lot of things that are now obsolete and are kind of reserved only for academic purposes. And all of these changes in the language structure reflected in the culture and in the specific markets change also the way we search online. And this is an example that if you are older than me or like me or you love TV movies, you recall something like this. In the past, people used to search for very extremely long terms and keywords and queries. Like it was not just fluffy pancakes. It was homemade fluffy pancakes recipe, like the one Lorelai and Rory eating Gilmore Girls. They were extremely specific because they were not familiar with what was going on, because they saw something that was speaking to them. They wanted a precise answer, and but at a certain point, people starting to switch and started to search for pancake because they thought that, okay, since I'm a human and I'm evolving, search engines, technology is evolving, so search engines are evolving as well. And so instead of searching for these very long things to search for pancakes recipe, they started searching for this. And if you look at the volumes globally, you see that this is extremely, extremely high volumes monthly. But the thing is that pancake itself, even if culturally for every different culture means something, it has a lot of different meanings. It can be the recipe, and that may be the first thing that we think when we search for pancakes, but it can also be photography technique, makeup technique, something related with aircraft, type of ice that breaks, specific product, but people may also search for visual. They imply something, but we don't know what they are implying. And when people think that Google is smart, the reality is that Google is not smart because it only gives what the model behind Google has been trained about. So thinking that when people search for pancake, they are automatically searching for a recipe, which may not be the case, or which may be the case for the American market, but may not be the case for, I don't know, the Mexican market or the Japanese market, where pancake may be something more specific to, I don't know, photography. That's because search engines are trained and Google itself are trained on not outdated, but a pregress knowledge that is not updated to it's not updated in real time, and it's kind of normal. But we in SEO can be smart and kind of somehow influence the agenda, influence the way search engine behave and react to user query. How? By adopting what it's called the speech up theory. And I'm going into in depth on this before showing you some example. So the speech up theory is a social linguistic theory that explain how people search for things. And that it's really how people search for things in everything and can be applied to search engines and to queries as well. There are three types of acts that people use this when they search online or offline. The first one is the locution, it's called locutionary act. So when we say, for example, it's hot in here, we are just, and we want to, we may want to just say, okay, it's just high, the temperature is extremely high, and that's all. We don't want to convey any other information. We just say, okay, it's very hot in here, that's it. But then when we say it's hot in here with an implicit intent, we may say, okay, someone should open the window, someone should turn up the AC. I'm super discomfort in this situation. Someone should do something about this. And then there is another one that is a consequence of the illocutionary act, that is the perlocutionary act. I say that it's an opinion. Someone listened to me and they basically just opened the window. So I want them, I'm not expressing discomfort. I'm just, I'm saying something and someone reacts to my request, to my statement. And the way it works is that when users type a query into a search engine, they are performing an illocutionary act, meaning that they write something with the meaning of something else or with the intention of having a precise result, even if it's not stated in the query. That's what is called an illocutionary act in search engines. And that's why we have to use it. We can use this for our own benefit if we do SEO, if we do in general marketing, not just SEO. Use this language-driven implicit search intent to understand how different people, how people in different markets search and why. There are different types of search, implicit search intent behind each query. One of the biggest ones is FOMO, fear of missing out, and it's extremely. When I explain this, people says, "Oh, yeah, it's true." But when it is in action, sometimes it's not as evident. FOMO shape pretty much everything, and there's something that I always like to bring as an example, what I call the Web Summit controversy. So the term Web Summit in Portugal is searched more than 6,000 times every month in Portuguese. So by Portuguese, European Portuguese people. Obviously, spikes happen mostly between September and November. Back to 2023, something happened. So there was this controversy involving the Israel government and the CEO of Web Summit. And as you can see, in Portugal, there was a spike, a bigger spike than simple the term compared to what happened every year, way much more. Why this happened? First of all, people are exposed to Web Summit content all year long. It's a big deal. It's something that happens offline and reflects online. And when this controversy happened, it didn't happen online. It happened offline, but the Portuguese people started to hear about this on television, on magazines, newspapers, billboards, pretty much everywhere. It was a super big deal. And the fear of missing out in this case was huge. If you are here, I'm in Lisbon. if you are here and you don't know what's Web Summit and you don't know what happened between the Israel government and the CEO of Web Summit, you're kind of cut off from a lot of conversation. So people don't search because they want to go to Web Summit. They search because something specific is happening in their country about this specific event. It's not about driving traffic. It's not about driving conversion. It's really an informational query. But if you don't know the reality of what's happening in the country and how the country is behaving, you don't know. You start thinking, oh, well, maybe I could do something to position my brand in this space right now, since they are searching for, but the search was driven by someone else, something else. So which in this case was the fear of missing out when you go out and people start talking about what was going on with the summit this year. Then there's the fear. So it's somehow even scarier than FOMO. And that's something that happened in Ireland during COVID. During COVID, well, it was almost the end. There was still COVID time there. In Ireland in 2022, wholesale gas prices hit their peak. And people started to search for Tesco Club Card. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Tesco. Tesco is a brand, is a chain of markets that they sell groceries. And they have this club card that is basically a fidelity card. And people started to search for this, and a lot of retailers, a lot of SEO, a lot of people working with brands started to figure it out why there's this peak here. Is something happening? Is something going on here? And the reason was simply this. People were looking for ways to save on groceries, to have, it's badly phrased, but to have money to pay for the gas and for the heating. Again, the fear of something happening in the country drove the search and brought a massive spike in the terms club card Tesco. It has nothing to do with building brand, with wanting to buy something. It was, again, just informational. And again, if you do an overall keyword research and you spot something like this, and you don't know why it's happening, it's easy to fall into the trap of saying, okay, I'm going to create a landing page for Tesco Club Card, and I'm sure I'm going to drive a lot of people to my other brand. It's not, correlation is never causation, vice versa. In this case, it was clear that there was something going on in society that drove this kind of search. The motivation is another big implicit search intent that we may not see when people search, and it's super cool when you analyze everything that is related to weight loss. So when you see one of the most searched keywords pretty much in every market, if I have to be honest, variation about every market is the best way to lose weight. And the first thing that we think it's okay, people want to are looking for advice, suggestions on how to lose weight. And it seems also what Google used to think that may have changed after last night. So the strategy is how to lose weight, the ways to lose fat, and blah, blah, blah. But what if our audience is not looking for the ways, but is looking for an extremely practical solution to lose weight? Not a list of tasks, not a list a list of things to do, but an extreme one solution, a product, a program, a personal trainer that actually is the pain out of them, is the fatigue associated to trying everything before arriving to a working solution. And that's exactly what, for example, Noom, I don't know if any of you is familiar with Noom. Noom is a platform for weight loss and weight management. That's exactly what they did during COVID. They started driving traffic, providing, using extremely broad terms to provide one practical solution, which is sign up to our app, and we give you a personal trainer that will follow your journey to people looking for how I can how I can lose weight fast and without going through list of advices that I'm not going to follow up because I have a family, I have a job, I have a life, and that's how they did it. They just target this kind of audience that was looking for a practical solution, bypassing what Google was suggesting and building a brand using SEO. Biases are huge again, and also this something that doesn't happen explicitly when people search. And one of the queries that is extremely cool to analyze the is X product worth it? When we see these kind of keywords, especially in markets like, for example, China or Japan or South Korea or Germany, where this is really one of the keywords that trigger certain countries to react in a certain way. The is this product worth it keyword is usually associated to let's create comparison pages because so I can show the value of my product compared to the values of similar product or I don't know, kind of products in the same space. But there are a lot of research that demonstrate the opposite. Very often, people searching for is this product worth X amount of money are not looking for a comparison between brands. They want to fulfill their social expectation. If I perceive myself or I'm being perceived as someone used to a certain lifestyle, I want to basically reinforce my idea that if I buy a product that costs a lot of money, it means that I am my social expectations are met. So, and there is also a lot of studies about this. One is a Chinese study, is not which explain. It's very hard to explain. There's a link in there, and when I will share the presentation with the team at Clearscope, you will find in there. So very often, people were put together in a choice of counterfeit luxury product versus non-counterfeit. And basically, what was discovered is that there is no difference in how people interact with counterfeit or genuine product, as long as there is no difference in design, because the most important thing is that they are satisfied with what they are showing outside of their circle. And that's why the keyword is product X worth money X is not always related to I want to see if what I get as value is I want to see if this product fulfill the expectation that I have about myself or the expectation that others have about myself as well. That's because everything is about, for many countries, everything about self-esteem, social expectation, and personal beliefs. The context is the one that, to me, is the most incredible and astonishing. And I'm bringing you an example from my country. I'm originally from Italy, so the country is Italy. And last year, there was this weird, extremely, I don't know, meaningless query popping up everywhere. Science full of sugars. So if you read the translation in English, it doesn't make sense. If you look at the Italian version, doesn't make sense as well. As basically, the query was people from Chile with sugar. No way this can make any sense at all. And it draws a crazy amount of searches every month only in Italy. And if you did a search on Google Trends to spot, let's say you work on a multilingual environment, so you want to do something in Italy and spot this, you couldn't guess what it was because it was hard also for Italians to understand what was going on with this thing. What is this? The exploration is easy. In February, there is a big event, Italian event, musical event, and there was this guy who brought up this song. One of the lines of the song had something that resembled the query Chileans with sugars. It was something else, but this guy has a strange way of pronouncing things in Italian as well. So what happened? People didn't understand what the song was about, and they made up this fake query that drove so much traffic to nothing because there was nothing. And two big brands in Italy saw an opportunity here. The first one is a cookie company, probably the biggest one in Italy. They created a fake brand, a fake product of cookies called Chileans, full of sugar. This brand, this product doesn't exist. They created a fake landing page. They engaged with the singer. They started to create engagement around this, and they became associated automatically, and then drove conversions to other products that were launched in the same time frame. So, and that was absolutely out of control. The other one was magazine. What did they do? So they do create recipes. It's a food magazine, very well established in Italy. They created the recipe. People were starting to look for these cookies, for whatever reason, and they just says, you know what? There is nothing. The only thing that is appearing after a week is the brand that is capitalizing. Let's capitalize as well. They invented the recipe, which actually looks super cool. And they started drive traffic. And of course, the page had ads, and these guys started to monetize on an existing query for an existing product born out an issue with the language. Again, if you looked at the Google Trends in that period, wanted to create something for the Italian market, just to say, I want to be there, I want to do something there, and you saw these, you couldn't have understood the reason why and what this query meant if you didn't know if you didn't know what was going on and everything about the culture and the way the language plays and the way people search for things. But why does this matter? It matters for different things, especially when we go multilingual. First of all, relevance. No, the more we customize for specific languages, the more we need to be relevant, and the more we need to understand not only what people are looking for, but why they are looking for something and how they are looking for something. Some countries, for example, pays much more attention to how they phrase things. Others don't. And that influences the way we should approach those specific countries. Engagement, which is extremely related to relevance. A person in one country engage with a piece of content when speaks to them, when trigger something that makes them recall an experience, recall a person, recall a TV show, recall a movie, recall a food. So the more relevant the content, the more engaging it is. And it goes without saying it's personalization. If we understand how every country search and how implicit search intent plays a big role in what people buy, what people consume, what people want to consume, we can offer a personalized experience that is also satisfactory. And then I always mention the theme of inclusivity. The more we go in depth understanding the market, not and not thinking that every country and every language is created equal. The more inclusive we can be, and when a company is inclusive, it means it takes care of the relevance, the engagement, the personalization, and the satisfaction of the end user. The more it becomes part of the ecosystem of the market. It's not seen as an outsider, but it becomes embedded. It is embedded into the country itself. People start trusting and people start recommending. There are a lot of examples of this. Canva is one, Booking.com is another one that went beyond the idea of every country should have the same approach because everyone search in the same way. But also, this has also a lot of implication from a product perspective and from a productivity perspective. When you know your market and you know that there is a market fit for your strategy, you can allocate your resources better. For example, you can just say that hypothetically, Portugal, Spain doesn't need localization, doesn't need SEO localization. We can just translate. But in reverse, France needs much more. We need to pay much more attention in France because they show these signs of how they search, why they search, what they pay attention to. It also increases efficiency because you don't waste time chasing something that it's not easy to bring results. If we treat every country and in the same way, and we always think that there are only three, four search intent, we spend time on something that we may not bring anything to us. And having a grasp on what happens in one market, what triggers people to search, and why they search for things that we don't see immediately also bring a competitive advantage. Because to be honest, the companies that do this are at an advanced stage in their market knowledge and market recognition. But for the small, there's always a lot of room. And the ones that do this are definitely a competitive advantage because they can reach more people and they can also create an omni-channel strategy that goes beyond search. When we know the market, we can create an SEO strategy that embeds very well with social, with user research, with the design team, with the demand generation team. And at the end of the day, this speed up the adoption of the product, of the service in one market compared to another, and also helps ranking better because we don't expect to rank for broad terms or to reach out to all the people in one country, but only to the people who are specifically searching for something for a specific reason. But how to measure success? So in all my projects, I tend to have four bigger metrics. So specific goals completion. Well, how many people and complete specific actions. It can be, for example, how many people don't call, don't send an email to support anymore because everything that we offer is clear. Or how many people buy, which is kind of the easiest one. How many people interact with the social, how many people keep coming back or keep browsing within the website, even if they land from search engine. And I love to add also micro conversions that can be a sign up to a newsletter, scrolling down the page. Micro conversions can be pretty much everything, even interact with a chatbot when it's present. But overall, one of the biggest metric when you do SEO for international clients in international market is brand visibility. And brand visibility can only be obtained if you have a clear idea of the market, doing market research, understanding users' search behavior, but not only user search behavior, users' expectations that varies by country. Users' expectations on what to look for a page online. For example, in Japan is extremely different from user expectation for people from Germany or from the Northern Europe. Brand visibility is really key to address these kind of things. And as we were talking at the beginning, this is an approach that needs to be considered as a whole because it doesn't have a technical foundation, even if the technical SEO should be there. So the technical is there, but it's a human approach, a humanistic approach. And at the end of the day, the only way to enter a market, whether it's with SEO, social, um, whatever channel you want to use, demand, email marketing, is that we understand how the humans function, how they search, what they expect, and also how the language they use, the dialect they use affect what they perform online, the actions that they perform online, and what they expect to see in return for their search. And I think that's it for me. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Veru. As you were talking, I was writing down a ton of different notes, and I have a bunch of questions. And if the audience has any themselves, feel free to pop them in. I'll kick us off with one just based off of your extensive experience in international SEO. There are theories that international SEO lags behind US-based SEO by 6 months to a year. Do you have any thoughts or advice surrounding, what that lag looks like in terms of, helpful content update and algorithms released in the US market and how that translates into international SEO?
It is true. It's usually way more. Sometimes it's even more than a year. Like for this search experience, generative search experience, we don't see anything yet. It's been more than a year. So it doesn't lag behind, and very often it's completely forgotten. So we basically have to ask and kind of mapping out our strategy and guess what could work and what could not work. And for example, in the case of Gen I, it's very hard because it is very hard also to find a pattern that can work because this can be extremely. So what's happening in the US, we are starting to see, for example, certain type of queries popping up in the generative AI answers more often than others. But we don't know if this will be replicated, for example, to a Latin language like Spanish, where the construction of a sentence is completely different. So how do search engine will make sure that if someone in Spanish search using a different construction of a sentence gets featured in there, it's really hard to replicate one-on-one what's happening in the US because for example, all the how to do something may be phrased different in other countries. So what we do, or at least what I do, is usually follow up what's happening in the big market, even to understand from other colleagues, peers, experiences. Okay, we are testing this, and kind of put everything aside, and then just says do some sort of A/B testing on different language. But it's very hard to follow up on one-on-one again and just says, okay, if it works in the US, it will work also in Norway because it's always not, but often never happens. Even because of the regulations, there are a lot of other factors that plays a big role.
Yeah, got it. Well, we got a handful of questions from the audience. There are two that are fairly similar, so I'm going to bundle them together. Nishada and Paula asks, how can we understand how users search in a different market? Are there any tools or research about it? For example, Portuguese in Brazil is likely different than Portuguese in Portugal. How do you go around navigating the research on language patterns in different geographies?
The first thing that I always recommend and I always do is to check if you work for a big company or you are consulting for a company that has layers. It's a good way to reach out to the business analytics unit and ask for their help. Because they may not have been performed market research per se, but they may help you giving some advice on where to go. Uh, on top of this, when it comes to product, for example, there's always even a little bit of market research done because if there is no market fit, there is no product for a certain market. So if there is a product involved, there's always market fit and market research. And that's another way to go. Another one is, and it's probably the biggest one, easiest to implement uh, because it's a human-based thing. Reach out to people from that market that knows that market. They can be, for example, linguists can help a lot with this to understand how different European Portuguese and Brazilian Portuguese are in terms of not just single words, but even buying behaviors. So it's linguist. Have a look, for example, also if you do work in trends, tools can help understand the search volumes can vary and can also give an input of what works and what doesn't work. And as strange as it seems, and I know it can be controversial, use AI to help you with this. Use automation to make sure to ask specific questions. Never expect a precise answer or a definitive answer, but it's a starting point for a conversation that then you can bring to a linguist, someone that does, for example, SEM, because people doing SEM for different markets usually knows what converts and what not converts in that market. And it's a huge indication of language and search behavior differences. So use AI, generative AI, as an ally to help you understand. For example, to summarize, you should ask. For example, I was mentoring someone last week, and they did something. I told them, you should try to do this. What they did was they asked, I think it was Claude. Yeah, I think it was Claude. Give me all the latest resources about how customer behaviors in Mexico, I think. Yes, in Mexico during last year Black Friday. What did they purchase, why, and blah, blah. And they gave a list of resources that were all scattered. And then from there, this person just took everything and dig deep into the research. So Gen AI doesn't give you the answer, it gives you the resource, can give you the resources.
Yeah, definitely. Which is a good segue into another question that I had while you were talking. I thought the psychology that you pointed out with the, is X worth it pattern was very fascinating, right? It's like in America, we might be Googling, is Hermes, Birkin bag, like, how affordable it is. Whereas, say, in another foreign country, it might be more around the prestige and the status. That said, right, you've been saying a lot about how a lot of the research that you do is talking to locals, local linguistics, getting their thoughts on, what the social patterns are. My question is, are there any other like patterns or frameworks that you've seen in terms of like the is X worth it be different in different like geographies? Like, yeah, what do you think about that?
Yes, there are quite a lot. And like every time there is a comparison, It's not just the word, it's like compare X against Y. The the expectations are different. Let me give you an example. When there is something like this, compare X versus Y, for example, in Germany, German people expect data. They don't expect anything else. They don't want the fluffiness. They are not looking forward to use win the deal, to push a product, to push the other one. They want data. Why? For this reason. How this make me save time? For this reason and in this percentage. Move to Japan, the same thing. They love to have all these what someone says is fluffiness, but it's more like a discourse and reasoning why one is better than the other, what are the advantages, and having a lot of visuals as well helps break. So it's really like related to two things. This is very academic, so I'm really sorry. So the first thing is how specific societies have been built, so the values. And sometimes it is stereotyped, but it's very, very true. Some societies are more individualistic and other more like community based. So there's this aspect. And then there's also a matter of the language. When you try to say something in German, it becomes way more complicated because the language is complex. So they are used to break things a lot. And they are used because their mindset to get data, to have a clear reasoning why something is better than another thing. In Japanese, as much as we think that the language is complex, they are used to culturally to be more, I'd like to say, poetic in a way, to be more discursive, to bring a narrative into things. So everything that is comparison is usually it's a good example of this. It's not just the word; it's really A versus B.
Yeah, fantastic. I love how, we have to, as SEOs and content creators, really understand the social aspects of, each culture to serve the most relevant and useful experience. Got another question from the audience. This comes from Nishada, and they ask, we have an online tool that can be used by anyone to visualize ideas, think mind maps, flowcharts, that sort of thing. If they are thinking about expanding to other regions, what is the framework that you would recommend to pick what countries to target first?
And this is not SEO, so audience Bernard don't hate me. But the first thing that you have to assess is your company ready to expand? Because we tend to work in silo. Okay, I do SEO. So if I expand to China and I bring traffic, my job is done. But it's not. Because so if I bring tons of traffic from China to my product that is translated in Chinese, but then I don't have the supporting resources for someone asking, I don't know, questions, doubts, anything, what service am I providing to these users? So for me, when I help companies going growth from their main markets, is always, are you really ready in terms of logistics? Because if you're not, let's take a step back and rethink about this in the future. But if you're ready, there are two ways to go for this. First of all, competition. Check how many competitors, what they are doing, if they are doing good, because it doesn't make sense. Because sometimes we say, okay, there are competitors. My competitors are there. I have to be there, but it's not it's it's not always the case that your competitors are doing great. They may be there, but they are not performing well because the market is not ready. So analyze the competitors, not just why they are there, but what they are actually doing there if they are doing good. And then there is the old school method that is checking if there is demand. Demand comes from search, but also from social. Do people talk about these things? How do they talk about this kind of tools or products? And if there's a demand, you can identify which markets are ready for your product. Um, yeah, I think that's it. But first, assess yourself honestly, because then you'll be in a lot of trouble. And and I see there is a great example of this, which is Notion. Notion is a master, is championing this extremely well. They are not everywhere. You don't see Notion websites up everywhere. Uh, these are in specific countries, or the major efforts are in specific countries and locale, because it is very, very hard to maintain a presence that is coherent and that can serve the users well everywhere.
Yeah, great response. Got another question from the audience. Anonymous asks, imagine you work for a big company and its main site is English targeting the US market. Would you recommend only translating content from English into other languages or also creating content from scratch to each market that you want to internationalize for?
Well, this is something that happens every time I deliver a presentation about multilingual SEO. Someone has to really prepare for this. Okay, there are two things to do. Not all content are created equal. So translating everything as a strategy doesn't work, because in your main market, people may search for something and you have a great piece of content or a landing page that can perform, but when replicated to another market, it may have zero relevance. So the first thing to do is assess which content can work in other markets and translate. You can do plain translation, SEO translation, and but assess what you have and what of what you have work, and then the success, the real success comes when you start creating customized content. It doesn't mean that existing and translated content are bad, because they are usually a good foundation, but at a certain point, you need to start creating new ones, new ones that also differ from the one on your source market, your main market. So there are two phases. The first phase that is always, or for the majority of the cases, what companies do, assess what they can translate and translate. Phase two, which, because the first phase also brings some sort of maturity to just say, I have the foundation and I have tractions on these specific topics. It's also a way to test what works best, and from there start scratching new content. Use basically this foundational content to understand what your target user in your target market wants and consume.
Amazing. Well, we're coming up on the hour. This was chock full of really awesome content. I, didn't really think too much about the social linguistic aspects of SEO, and you really opened my eyes to a lot of different concepts.
I'm glad. I hope it was not too, academic or.
No, it's great. So before we hop, what is one piece of advice that you would love to leave our audience and those who are going to watch this recording with as we move into SEO for 2025?
I sound like a broken record on this, but everything starts from knowing who your target users are. So don't chase the world, chase the small things in the world. Because if you want to reach out to too many people, you will end up not reaching out to anyone. You will be one of the many. And I think SEO can be a good channel, is a good channel in many cases to narrow down the users, the targets that you want to reach out to. So my piece of advice is just find your target users, speak to them, refine your engagement with them, and craft strategy around that target users. You don't have to rank for everything. Rank for the things that A brings value to your user, B brings value to your brand, and money.
There you have it. You know, target the right users. Don't create generic fluff content.
Yeah.
And yeah, awesome advice. Well, thank you so much, Veru. This is a
Thank you
complete
so much.
pleasure. And we'll see y'all around.